Honestly, there was a discussion last night about Eric Christensen's in the backpack here, and he was making fun of me because he was telling a story not 2 nights ago. Well, actually, yeah, it was 2 nights ago. Yeah, Rob pretty much called me and told me to get into a car to drive down. And it wasn't like a telling thing. It was like he ordered me to get into a car because he didn't want me to drive at 4 a.m. To come down to the summits because last night's going to be a really late night. And the way he worded it was almost just like how I told Phil to get into this job, like shut up and come over to where we were working at that point in time. All right, let me see if I can get over to the slides. Oh, there we are. So this talk kind of morphed from a very similar Rob, and I'm looking at Viv here in the front row, who also kind of didn't really ask me to do the talk. It was you will do this talk. You've never spoken at your event in the 15 years that you've run this summit, and ever since that we handed it over to Heather and Phil, I always kind of find it weird to give a talk at the summit. So since it's been Heather and Phil's event over the past 3 years, Viv said, "Hey, what a better opportunity now have you talk since it's no longer your event." I was like, "Oh, great." And I really appreciate the invite and happy to be here. This graphic, and again, the D for Godfather, I have to admit a little bit of a failure on my part over the years. I'm a big movie buff, but I had not seen The Godfather ever. And I know during COVID, I had to rectify this issue. One of my good friends, Kate Marshall, made fun of me pretty hardcore because she did this graphic. And I told her, I said, I had to, I admittedly, I'd never seen The Godfather. I said, I kind of get the reference, but she said, you need to correct this right now. Within weeks, I watched it. I said, oh, this is a really good movie. She said, don't watch Godfather 3, watch Godfather 1 and 2, and you're pretty much done. I'm like, all right, I did that. So, Francis Ford Coppola, amazing filmmaker. Also, which I later found out watching this series on Disney Plus, Light and Magic, how the close relationship between George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, they developed their own studio. They had a really close relationship. And I say, how did I not know all these years about this, being the big Star Wars fan that I am? So this presentation, everyone's really wanting to know, especially if you're brand new to digital forensics, is like, how do you get your start? A lot of people come up to me and said, Rob, how do I be you? And I said, well, first of all, you need a laugh. And I said, that's really hard to replicate. I need to trademark it. Jennifer Santiago, who's one of the summit, she literally has this radar thing. It's like, where's Rob? She texted me she's like, where's Rob? And I laughed, and she said, I found you. She opens up at the door and just points at me. But my laugh, you have to have a laugh. But no, that's really not what this is about. She's like, how do we become someone to start in forensics? How do I, start in cybersecurity? How do I get my, first 2 steps into the field? So instead of doing a 50-minute talk on this, I'm going to start off with the answer to this question. How do you do this? How do you get your start? Everyone know what the term bluff is. This is the basic way your first letter of success in any email exchange is do the bottom line up front. Instead of writing a very lengthy email, you always do the bottom line up front. The 3 secrets to success in DFIR. Everyone ready? This is it. This is going to be the 10-minute presentation. Boom, right here. So number 1, never stop learning. And again, if anyone who's new here, anyone who's been doing this for 20 years, from Heather to Phil to anyone, from Brian Carrier to anyone who is a NASA scientist planning on the Mars missions, Elon Musk, I guarantee every single individual who's out there that you think that they're an expert in the field, I guarantee that every day they wake up and they're listening to podcasts, they're reading books, they are consistently learning something new. They're filling their lives with knowledge constantly, not only in digital forensics, not only in cybersecurity, it is constant absorption of data in some form or another. And I think a lot of you already know this, but again, for those who are new, you may not know this. You're probably saying, hey, I was like, I didn't really realize that those who are at the top of their field are just like those who are new in their field. Because for me, I'm looking at things that I said, I've always wanted to learn how to play the piano. I'm currently renting a house in the Denver area. I just moved to Denver a year ago, and I somehow landed this amazing home, which is basically an Airbnb for a year. It's not an Airbnb, but the owners left to Sweden and basically left all their furniture in it, which is great because I don't have to buy any furniture, especially with the supply chain stuff that's going on right now. And there's a piano in the middle of it. And I said, maybe now's the time. There's this piano sitting here. I should look up, some classes or maybe hire an instructor. There's a bunch of electronic apps. And of course, now that I say this, I guarantee like 2 to 3 of you who've learned in the past couple of years are going to come up and, advise me on this. And this is also something else that when you learn, you find out there's a community out there of also self-learners and who have taught themselves or who have taken classes on these things. I was like, here's how I learn. And this is one of the things that's great about it is that, okay, I'm now a learner, first time individual going out there and learning how to play the piano. So how do you do that? But also the second piece of this is also very important as you're learning. Be curious, not confident. Anyone who is an expert in their field will tell you that the more that you learn, the more that you learn what you don't know. Any expert in the field will always be aware of what they don't know or more what they do know. Sarah Edwards is, a good example of this, that the Apple architecture, the Apple devices, the Apple stuff that she works on a daily basis, is so complex that if you throw her anything that is a new question at her, she will be fully admit to you. She's like, well, I honestly don't know that. You would look at her, she's like, well, you're the expert on this. How do you not know this? Where someone in, growing up, in the field is like, well, I'm supposed to be the expert. It's like, you're going to throw down or say, well, this is what's written in the book. This is, of course, what you're supposed to know. And you draw this line. But an expert in the field will always say, well, even though the book is written this way, it may be wrong. Or I did this research before, I might be wrong, or maybe the standard has changed. So always be curious, not confident in anything that you're doing. Second thing to look at here, again, in the bottom line up front here, is be kind. In anything that you're doing is just a general approach out there. I've seen a lot of people in this field. Anyone who runs around with a big chip on their shoulders and is not kind to others, I've never seen them succeed in this field, ever. It is just a natural tendency that you could kind of point, these individuals out, and anyone who's out there who is not kind to others while they're learning and while they are trying to explore. And this is kind of one thing that I love about this community in general. And you don't see it across all the other communities that exist in cybersecurity, is that this community in particular has a habit of welcoming those who are new. And I'm not going to point out other communities that I kind of have an opinion of that they're much more, they have a defensive wall around it that you have to prove yourself to get into it. And if you don't prove yourself, they troll you a little bit until you get to the point where you could get in, and then you're allowed in to hang with the, those with the leather jackets and the T-Bird, motorcycle gang on the back. In the forensics community, you could go to the Recess Arcade and someone says, I'm brand new, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. It's like, oh, come on in. Let's go do Jenga together. I don't know what I'm doing either, but I've been doing it for 10 years. It's amazing. And that's the thing that across the board that I would love to tear down those walls in the other communities with this be kind message, which is we're all new and we're all new all the time. Be kind. The third one, the best. And everyone you think is the best. And you know who we are, is because some of you say, well, I think they're all cliquish, they're all hanging out together. you kind of have this like, fanboy, fangirl approach to some of us. The best are not as good as you think they are. We're human, we're your peers. We are actually your peers in most of this stuff. Come up to us, and if you actually treat us like your peer, we'll treat you as your peer too. Most of us are 100% human beings in all of this stuff. And most of the things that if you start doing a research and you start like asking questions, we're sitting down having a drink with you, and all of a sudden you're a year from now, you're like, wow, I don't know how it happened, but I am friends with Brian Moran. I'm hanging out with this dude, and all of a sudden everyone's like, what? This is why this community works in forensics, in cybersecurity, is that as soon as you stop thinking that the best are somehow segmented off, the best are just human beings, just gave a talk at some point. So everyone out there who thinks you can't be on the stage within a year, you're wrong. You could come do a little bit of research, and all of a sudden you're up on the stage thinking about things. All right, so that's the bluff. That's the secret. How do you do what you do? It's those three things. Now, I'm going to take a step back in time and talk about how did I get to those three things, and take a little bit expanded view in the TLDR for this stuff as well. So the TLDR, and a little bit about my origin story, which is, again, if you read the background to who I am and how I got to be here a little bit, is, again, this conference, the summit in general, 15 years. Again, now I feel like really old. 15 years. I remember when I went to my 10-year high school reunion, and I was like, wow, I am freaking old at my 10-year high school reunion. And now I've been at this event for 15 years in a row. And I look at the pictures back then, I was like, man, I was hot back then. And, and now I'm like, what the hell happened? I know, I think things go downhill quick. But do I feel any smarter 15 years later? Absolutely not. Do I feel that somehow I have some more technical prowess than I did 15 years ago? No, things have rapidly changed. I am still the same individual, maybe in terms of what I'm doing, my passions have changed, the people I'm hanging out with. By and large, in some cases, some of them are the same group, some of them have changed over the years. The group has expanded, but some of the things that I'm going to tell you here are some of the core truths that have hung with me over the years. What I'm doing, though, has changed, and what I'm doing at SANS has changed over the years, too. So some of these core truths, in terms of what makes me an individual, and what I'm going to tie into some of the themes of why I'm going to impart some of these lessons to those who are new to the cybersecurity field here, also ring true, because things are not as easy as you think they are when you're just starting out. Like, I've had a couple conversations with my son and my daughter and those who are also just starting out. And one of these conversations that I've had, most recently, a lot of people get on my case about this, is, should people go to college? This is one of those, like, my son's like, what should I major in college? I'm like, dude, you're 10. I'm like, this is not something you need to worry about right now. My daughter has no interest in this. She's like, right now, she's just like, okay, I want to play Roblox. I'm like, okay, cool. She's going to major in Roblox and do very well at this. But my son is like, how do you know what you want to be when you grow up? And I said, honestly, you don't. What you need to do right now is focus in on the things that make you happy, the things that you find your passion. There's going to be a theme out there that you're going to focus in on. But I also started to tell him, I said, but you also need to take a look at things that you sign up for. You should commit yourself to completing those things. Like, if you sign up for soccer, you should go to the practices. You should go to the games. We should, complete the season. And at the end of the season, you should make a decision at that point whether or not you're going to do the next season. And I know some of the times you're waking up in the morning, it's hard. You're like, it's early morning game, hockey practice, especially if you're a hockey dad, is like you're getting up. Some of those games are really early in the morning. And of course, trying to drag your son or daughter out, out of bed at those times is not fun. And they don't want to do it. I said, we made a commitment to this. And this goes back to this thing here, where when I was in high school, there was a lesson I learned. this ties into where it's going to be for you as well. One of the things that I am going to recommend here is that when you commit to something, you have to carry it through. And this is like, if you start to learn something, at least get to a point of self-mastery for this. For my story is the heart side. For anyone who started Boy Scouts, the Life Scout emblem is the heart. Is anyone familiar with Boy Scouts? It is the heart symbol, is the Life Scout. And I was 2 requirements away from becoming an Eagle Scout, just 2. And high school hit and life hit, and I basically stopped. A lot of reasons why I look back at it, but it's one of those things that I went back and I looked. I have my book still from the Boy Scouts, and I thumbed through it and I look at those 2 requirements, and they were super easy, maybe 2 weeks worth of time. That's it. And then a board to get my Eagle Scout. To this day, you sit there, everyone has this no regrets thing in life, but this is a regret of mine. And what's that? I don't think so. You can, 18. I could do it mentally. I've got my Eagle Scout, but you got to get it done by 18. I got my Eagle Scout, but again, it's like, you can't do it. It's like, you have to do it by 18. And so as a result of that, I sit there and look at that. And I was like, man, I should have done it. Why didn't I do it? What, life gets in the way of these things. And, I should have followed through. It's that follow through that sometimes is that lesson that we have to take a look at when we're walking through life at this point. So around that point in time, and is around the point, it's like 18 happened. I look back and I said, oh, I should have done it. That was that regret that kind of set in at that point. And I kind of made a decision at that point saying, okay, that's not going to happen again. When I commit to something, I'm going to try and finish, at least get the follow through, and then look back and make a decision. It's kind of, for a lot of people who know me, this has kind of become either a curse or a blessing, is that I will stick with something to the end and then make a decision whether or not I'm going to either cut or continue. Cut or continue. And whether or not, and again, anything is hard in life. This is, again, whether you're working out, and a lot of people have been with me a while. I actually call this thing when you're just starting to run and work out. And for anyone who's known me for many years, I used to be really big. And when you're first running, you have this thing that hits you that says you should stop running now. And your mind is telling you, stop run, stop run, stop run, stop run, stop run, until all of a sudden you get through it. And all of a sudden you're like, mind is like, okay, this is actually okay. And now you could run for about 30, 40, 50 minutes, and then you could actually run even longer than that. A lot of people call this the shit shift, excuse my language, but that's actually a term, you can Google it. That getting through that shit shift is a very interesting point in not just working out and running, but that shit shift occurs in many different locations in learning, in your jobs, in personal relationships across the board, that there's an uncomfortable hill and hump you need to get over to where you get to comfort again. And that's where a lot of people, where you get stuck ends up being. It's like, are you gonna quit or continue? And that's where that comes in. It's like, are you gonna be able to get over that hump? And so this is where, for me, I always tell people who are just starting out, saying, don't forget how important it is to get through that initial hump, because if you don't, there's always going to be this look back and saying, did I quit too early, or did I not have the follow through? And that's why I'm trying to tell my son and my kids, it's like, if you sign up for something, you have to commit to it through the end of the season. Then you can make a decision on whether you're going to do it for next season or not. And I'm like, at that point we can make a call. Not until, maybe I'm just a mean dad. I don't know, but at that point we'll make a call. Now, school, that's not a question. It's like, okay, into 3rd grade, well, am I gonna go to 4th grade? Okay, some of these things are, maybe the college decision may be a part of that. I said, we may have, some questions there, but, because for a lot of us out there, do we need to have college for a cybersecurity degree? Some of this stuff is technical trade stuff. This next thing that comes up is this thing that you're not good enough. When I was at the Air Force Academy, And this is where, when you're just starting out something new, I was recruited into basically the first cyber unit and doing information security that didn't exist. No one knew what the heck they were doing. There was a single book that existed on the planet, Gene Spafford's Practical Internet and Unix Security book. This is like a real throwback. Has anyone even heard of this book? It's a yellow O'Reilly book. It existed like back in 1995. Like, this thing was the only book that I could find other than TCP/IP Illustrated Volume 2. And I was scared beyond belief that I was recruited into this unit because, I apparently knew how to spoof email, and people knew it. And they were like, okay, because you knew how to spoof email, we're recruiting you into this unit who apparently they think you know what you're doing on how to defend entire Air Force bases from internet-based attack and all these scary hackers. Like, my eyes, go wide here. And of course, no one knew what they were doing at this point. But there was this aspect of it that they thought I knew what I was supposed to be doing. So I was scared. So this false expectations, which is what that the acronym stands for, false expectations appearing real, is this fear that sets in that you are not good enough because you don't know what you're doing. The key here is no one knows what they're doing that is around you. We're all winging it. But again, you think everyone else around you knows what they're doing. No one knows what they're doing, not just in your career, but in life. By the way, your boss doesn't know what they're doing either. The executives don't know what they're doing. Everyone's kind of winging it. They have a little bit more knowledge than you in certain areas, but it's true when you end up taking a look at it, it's like a lot of the things that are being done around you is a lot of decent guesswork. And some cases, it's a lot of education and things around you. But in a lot of this stuff where the fear comes in, and why I'm tying this back into these stories is that when you end up starting something new, especially in your careers, is that it is okay to feel inadequate. And this ties into the next phase of the story, because this, those two things in my origin, like, tie into when I got recruited by SANS. I had, like many of you, I met Ed Scotus, I met Eric Cole. I had this massive fanboy. I was like, I am finally learning how to do internet security and all this other stuff. And I started taking SANS classes. And then I started teaching SANS classes and authoring SANS classes. And when that happened, there's something else that occurred. And this is where the things I wish I actually learned in a SANS class kicks in. So you take SANS classes, all the technical stuff that's out there. Here's where we're going to start diving into where the bluff comes in, the bottom line up front, but the actual things that, and this comes from, if anyone's familiar with the book, everything you need to know in life, they taught you in kindergarten. It's a book by Robert Fulghum that came out during the mid-90s. It's an amazing book, by the way. It still resonates today, but it's very similar to this, that everything you actually wish they taught you in a SANS class, but didn't. It's on the non-technical stuff. So the first thing is that there needs to be in every SANS class a section on the imposter syndrome, which ties into that fear. The first thing I'm going to mention to you is that you, like everyone else out there, is constantly challenged with the imposter syndrome, which is everyone is worried and consistently challenged that you're not good enough to wear the shoes. And the shoes basically ties into this theory that, why I use the shoe analogy is for anyone who is going to be wearing, and I use the shoe analogy like dance shoes. If you're going to be out on the dance floor and you're going to have dance shoes on, therefore you know how to dance. But in order to learn how to dance, you need to have dance shoes on. This becomes a catch-22, because if you put the shoes on, people assume you know what you're doing. But you don't want to put your shoes on because you don't want to have the shoes on, because then people assume you see what's going on here now. But you need to equip yourself in order to be able to do it correctly. So if you show up, let's assume you walk out to, I'm going to go learn how to climb a wall In order to do that safely, you have to have all of the equipment, safety equipment, ropes, the clips and everything else. So if you walk out there with all that gear on and you show up at that wall, I mean, you're gonna look like a pretty much of a badass. And anyone who doesn't know any differently and you never climbed a wall before, guess what? They're gonna look at you and saying, hey, you look like you've done this for a while. They're like, no, I've never, no, seriously, don't talk to me. This is the problem with the imposter syndrome. It's like you feel that someone's gonna actually ask you a question about it. And everyone has the same issue, is that everyone is sitting in this bucket. And it's okay. You almost got to relish in the fact that no one knows what they're doing and ask questions. And you're in that learning stage. Guaranteed doctors, lawyers, judges. I mean, you got to think people on the Supreme Court go on day one and they don't have like the F&G status. Google that if you don't. I'm not going to acronym that for you. I mean, you got to think hey, your first day on the Supreme Court, you do not get that label. I guarantee they do. That first day, it's like, yeah, your first case, yeah, nervous, yep. Everyone does. This is where that imposter syndrome that comes into play here. And it's amazing when you end up thinking about it. Equip yourself regardless if you think you deserve the shoes or not. Go buy the equipment. Don't hold yourself back. Now, the equipment may be expensive or not, then rent it. Buy it from someone else. But again, always equip yourself with the stuff, even if you think someone's going to judge you for it, that you have not earned it yet. Equip yourself with the right stuff in order to learn the job properly in all instances. It's a good recommendation in general, but because if you don't, how are you going to learn properly? Arm yourself with the right equipment. I can't tell you what is the equipment list you have, Rob. It's like, it depends on what you really need to do for your job at that point. But again, I see time and time again, it's like, I have not earned, it's like the movies have this big, dramatic thing about this, the superhero earning this uniform and the batarang, at the right point in the movie, or the sword. That's all BS. What you need to do is go right out the door and saying, what do I need to be able to do this now? And how do I learn using the equipment that I will be using in my day job? It's super important that you start using the equipment now, not what you will be using later. Even if you have to borrow it from a friend. Say, what are you using there? Okay, can I use that? And go forward with that. Breaking glass in rules. So this one's interesting because you have to take a step back that in this field, this one comes up quite frequently. And I'll give you an analogy first before I dive into how messed up digital forensics is in general about rules, because we're layered with rules in general. But not more than 2 nights ago, again, a story about my son. He watches, I'm paying a bill, and they bring out the card reader and stick the card in, and they hand it back to me and said, we need your signature. And I put my signature in. We're walking down the street after I put my signature in. He asked me a question, Dad, how do I get a signature? And I said, well, you have a signature. It's, you spell it C-O-N-N-O-R. He said, yes, I know, but how do I get a signature? I said, you have a signature. This is going back and forth several times here. You have a signature. He said, no, you don't understand. How do I obtain a signature that you could use in the reader? What he's thinking is going on is that there's some universal signature checker in the, somewhere on, up in the cloud somewhere that is checking my signature from what I put in. Now, everyone in here knows I could do that as my signature, and that counts. He's wanting to know how he could get his signature registered into the cloud, so when he signs something, it'll also check. And I said, it doesn't exist. And he's, why do we do it? Why are we doing something called a signature? I had to stop there and I said, because we do it. And then I had to explain, I said, okay, let me take my mobile device out. And I said, when I take a picture, I turn the sound on. When I take a picture, do you know why it makes that sound? No. I had to explain the sound of the camera. I was like, there's no reason that sound exists other than back in the 50s, this, film thing, ka-chink existed. We are sometimes sitting on the reason we do something no longer makes sense other than it's because of the way we used to do something. Signatures, as we all know, are one of those things. It's 100% security theater. We all know it. And we everyone in here makes fun of it. We're like the people at the party are like, yeah, signatures, da, da, da. We all tell our backstory on that. It was like, it doesn't matter. Chip and card readers, we have our little thing we talk about it. But the reason I talk about the break glass stuff here, especially when you are new, guess what? You have new eyes on things like no one else. You are my son. You are like my son at that point. You're asking, why are you doing that? You are asking the question, why do you do MD5 and SHA-1 sums for evidence hashing? Why both? Why does that make sense? Why do we? Well, it's because why? That is amazing perception to be able to ask at that point, to ask the why question. Now, I also noticed out here during break, everyone lined up to get the stickers. Why? There was was there a sign of rules out there that said you have to form a line to go get the stickers and the little keychains? Or just like there's some generic rules thing that someone said, hey, this is a really nice way to do it. Or if you really wanted to, you could go up there and, stick your hand between the people, grab some stickers and claw them out, like the claw from Toy Story. I mean, this is the kind of thing when it comes into when you're new, are we following a set of rules because it is like, there's this default set of gentlemen's, ladies' rules in an environment, or when we're in a career field, we're told these are the rules you must follow because someone else set the rules a long time ago and we must follow the rules. My advice for everyone in here, when you're looking at rules in general, break glass with an exclamation point. Don't break glass to the point where you get in trouble, but break glass to the point where you will be able to look at something and saying, like my son, why are we actually doing the signature? Because you're new, you're going to have that new perception that no one else has. Break the glass, challenge the rules when you can. And you're going to be able to be that new person to nudge things into new directions. Those of us who've been in the field for 20 years cannot perceive things because we've been doing it. We're the old school folks. It's one of the reasons, they make fun of the boomers and now we make fun of the millennials and the Zers are gonna be made fun of here soon. It's like everyone who's the old school folks, it's the old way of doing things. Like I look at some of the Gen Zers these days who are like, why do I need to get a driver's license? It is a serious question. Why get a driver's license? It's like, well, it's what you're supposed to do at 16. Why? I don't need a driver's license. Anytime I need to get somewhere, I just like, Uber, whatever. What's the point? It's a new way of thinking. I hadn't considered that. Some of the things of what we're challenging society today is that breaking rules needs to be adhered to. So break the rules, especially if you're brand new. You are sitting on top of something really special. Don't worry about it at that point. You have that perception no one else has. Break the rules. Chad. So taking a stop here for a second, everyone needs to think about my friend Chad. I have to figure out which one I drank out of here. So Chad is my co-author for 500 and 508. And back, I would say, 2007, I started talking to Chad Tilbury about helping me co-author 508. And it took, I think, 2 years of conversations with him until he finally, and again, I don't even know where Phil's in back here. Chad, unlike Phil like immediately said, yes, I'll come on board. Chad was a very long, it took him a while until he finally said, okay, I'll consider it. And then he came on board and was my co-author for 508, and then eventually became my co-author for 500. And the reason I mention Chad is that you can't do things in a vacuum. It's not just about you. It's every time that I look back, the one single piece of advice I always tell people is figure out who your partners are. Who is your team? Who are the ones that you're going to be working closely with? And I guarantee the team and the people that you work with are going to be the same people that are going to be surrounding you for the next 15 to 20 years. Kind of professionally, personally, they're going to be in your orbit for a long period of time. And you see these people, again, bounce around. Sometimes they'll disappear for 5 years, they'll come back. And a lot of these folks that are out there, end up primarily, being significant contributors, personal, professionally, inside, and being your greatest supporters and helpers across the board. Chad's one of those. Both of those courses would not be what they are today without Chad's influence. So to a certain extent, he is the was to, those products. And granted, a lot of people credit me for 500 and 508, because I helped, essentially instantiate and create them. But without Chad's diligence and working on them, neither of those products would be the success they are today without Chad working with me on them. And that's one of the significant portions, and I have to give a lot of credit to, like, who is your Chad when you're going through this process of being new and starting out there? Who do you work with? Who's going to be your partner? It's not like all of a sudden, well, I need to go find, so start now. But when you're looking out there and you're starting to, really figure out who you're resonating with and who's your, natural partners, who do you call on a daily basis? And it's not just, Chad that has ended up being a part of my team. I have many others that are out there, and you see them across the board here inside my circle of folks out there. And a lot of the people are sitting in the audience here. Some of my family, some are, let me go back one so you can see the name. They all become your team. And obviously there's actually about 50 people I could probably added to this slide. But I intentionally added a lot of people I knew would be here in this room and online. But the reason I specifically mentioned Chad is because he became, for years, directly attributable to the SANS product that I worked on for 508 and 500. But then also directly associated with the summit with Heather and Phil, Kate, Viviana, Lee Whitfield, Dennis Gandret, advice from my sister, Melinda, she might be watching online. A lot of these folks that I'm constantly lean on for day-to-day, what goes on in Rob's head. It's not just, what I do is attributable to how I function is, hey, Rob just somehow does stuff. Honestly, it's mostly them. I mean, I hate to tell you that, half the things that I have an idea, and that idea might be just like, well, here's a stupid idea. And Phil might say, percolate on that, and they actually come up with the actual idea. And then we end up executing on it. Or Heather, the same thing, or Kate. All of these things that come out of it. Eric Christensen, who's sitting in the back there, here's another one that he sat in my class, and his name's up on this chart too, I would say 10 years ago. And he started talking to me about the SIFT workstation and saying, Rob, you're doing it all wrong. It literally is, you should do Docker packages, you should do this, you should do that. And I just looked at him, I said, can I employ you, 1099 you? I could use some help on this thing. He said, sure. I would do it for free. I'm like, no. I was like, let's just figure out a way to, have you start working. And he became the engineer behind Sift, and was doing it for many, many, many years. And again, Eric, I don't know if everyone turn around and look at Eric. So he is the man behind Sift right there. Eric now works at SANS. He's our chief engineer of all ranges, and basically is engineering the entire scalable interface of how we're powering SANS courseware in the cloud. And that's how some of that stuff happens. A single conversation of an individual coming up to you and saying, hey, I have an idea about how to do Docker packages in a virtual machine that I happen to do this in my other job. A relationship that you form because of a single conversation, because of an idea, forms a relationship, forms a friendship, forms a partnership, and forms a lifelong, connection. And Erica is also loves Legos, loves Marvel, really good dude. And he's working with Phil and I, and you sit there and look at him, you just sit there and have a conversation with him. You'd just be blown away about the amount of knowledge the guy has on this stuff. But that's kind of, each one of these individuals has their own backstory with me that I would be able to bring to the forefront. And Chad also is, like I said, you have a very similar story with Chad when his contributions of 500, 508 along the way. So next one, and take a pause here for a second. So find your team, but this one is very important as well. And this one I find giving a lot of advice on to people kind of mid-career, not when you're new, but when you're kind of 10 years in, that you kind of get this kind of stuck mode. You reach this point in your career where you're saying, I'm really not doing what I thought I'd be doing. I'm kind of meh. It's the old adage, and I have to say I was kind of torn on the way to describe this. Is it stress? Is it, you're kind of unhappy? But the meme that a lot of us who describe this is the dog with the coffee cup, the "it's fine" meme. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, yeah, it's fine. You're just sipping coffee. There's a fire burning around you. Like, I'm good, I think. And you're just content, but you're realizing you're not okay. And versus waking up every day and saying, I love my job. I love what I do. And I love who I'm interacting with. So case in point with what I'm now doing at SANS. I don't know if a lot of you realize this at SANS right now, that I've moved away from teaching. They asked me 2 years ago to move from the DFIR curriculum lead position, and I'm now helping lead all of the curriculum and in a leadership position. So all the cloud, digital forensics, offensive operations, all the curriculum leads, curriculum directors, all the content now roll under me. And it's a big change for me. And I was really worried that I was going to lose my passion, because I loved my job running digital forensics and incident response at SANS. And you worry about anytime you make a big shift like that, it's like, am I going to lose my passion? But another passion of mine has always been leading teams and leading content, in the SANS dream of affecting cybersecurity in the right way. And I also look at things, I said, could someone else do that job? Could they, and I just like had that ego thing in there a little bit. It's like, well, what if someone else is doing it not as good as what I could possibly do? I said, well, I don't know. It's like, I think I could do a good job, maybe, I don't know. I think I'd like to do that job. I'd like to be given a shot at that job. I hope I'm doing it well, but again, there's this passion of mine that says, I want to wake up every morning and not just affect digital forensics, but affect all of the content that SANS is delivering worldwide. And that's my job right now, and I love it. I can't believe they pay me for this. Of course, my boss might be watching on screen right now. It's like, good to know, Rob. But but it writes that down. But I love what I do. and now every job out there has its stresses and your eye roll moments and the grass is greener on the other side. But SANS has a promise, the most trusted source of information security certifications. I believe in this mission of what we do, the most trusted source, and I believe that we have this mission that we're trying to accomplish. Now, if I didn't believe that mission and I was in a meh, it's fine, I'd wake up every day, kind of stare at things, not really sure what the mission is, not really sure what my why of why I'm doing this. That's if you're in that role, and this is where I advise people. I have people call me out of the blue. I have people that I work with sometimes say, I'm not really sure that I see what I'm doing anymore. That's where I get a little bit concerned. And have you lost your own personal why of what you're trying to accomplish? And that's if you're brand new and maybe you need that brand new moment to your own career field of what you're trying to accomplish, your own personal it's why that we're trying to accomplish. So it's fine versus your own passion. You need to try and find your passion. And this is something too, if you want to reach out to me, if you are in that situation, I'm glad to try and talk to you about it. Like find me in the hallway. This is something that it's a personal thing. That sometimes people need that, like, let's talk about it. And it's hard to like unbox that a little bit because sometimes it's what's affecting you is actually not your job, it's other things. But again, that's where I'm like, hey, you need to go talk to someone else when you find that out. If it's your job, sometimes you need to redirect and find out it's not the fact that you're doing well, let me refactor that. Sometimes people got promoted and they're doing the wrong job suddenly. And this is where a good friend of mine, Laura Dawson, we keep on asking her, I said, do you want to get promoted? She's like, no, I'm perfectly fine in the job I'm in. And we're like shocked. She's like, no, this is the job I like doing. I'm very passionate about my job. And I said, well, don't you want additional money? Do you not want additional time, authority, all these other things? She said, no, I actually don't. I was like, the money is like, I'm able to live comfortably. Well, what about cost of living? She's like, well, that sounds like something that you need to worry about to make sure that I'm going to be happy in my job. I'm like, again, some of this stuff comes from, there's a TikTok that came out that actually had some of these themes in it too that, we sent to her. I was like, this sounds just like you. And she's like, oh yeah, that's definitely me. And it ties into this theme that sometimes you don't need to be promoted to be happy. Sometimes you just need to realize that happiness comes from understanding that it's not your own personal happiness doesn't come from getting promoted and getting into, hey, I'm going to be getting my teeth kicked into a new position, but realizing every time I work up, my passion is actually working next to the people I love on a daily basis. But it always comes into this. You reach that certain age, you're like, I have 10 years to do it. If I don't do it in the next 10 years, now what? And this is where what would Chad do? Because Chad and I have these conversations all the time. Chad is one of these individuals that honestly, he could have done a startup. He could have become a CEO of all these other industries, but has had conversations with me. He says, Rob, we live comfortably. We get to go on a couple vacations a year. We get to, talk on the phone. We look at some of our peers that are out there in the field. Are they really that happy? And I said, you have a very good point. I said, what is happiness to you? Does it need to be at the startup, shooting for the stock options and, drilling yourself into the floor 12 to 16 hours a day? Or is it really saying, hey, I want to work for a very laid back organization in which I have my life and I could go to concerts and mountain bike on the weekends and take a vacation every now and then and have a lower salary? What is your passion? And what is going to create the it's fine moment for you? This is a very hard discussion. And I think a lot of us in our field are torn by this. Go to the startup, get your, options and your bonuses and all this other stuff because all my friends are doing it. And you get over there and you're like dying. And I see this happen all the time. And on the other side, you see individuals and your friends out there mountain biking on the weekend. It's like, what are you doing differently? It's like, I don't need that. I want my life. I like having a different way of doing it. You're still technical, but you're choosing a different path. And this is where that you have to make that option there, because the seduction of the other side makes it sound like it's really cool, but are you really going to be landing on that big payout? And that's where, when we get into the some of these last assets of this, we'll get into that. The next thing we would talk about here is the up, down, left, and right. Is when you're in any organization, managing relationships requires you to manage up, down, left, and right in almost every single situation. And what that means is that a lot of us, we latch on to only those individuals that we like. It's weird. We tend to only interact with people that we like. In all organizations, and this is where the hard part is, you have to break out of your comfort zone and interact and manage relationships and build relationships with people that you sometimes don't like. And that sometimes means I need to go out of my way to manage a good relationship with my boss. I need to manage relationships with those that work underneath me that maybe I don't like, peers I don't like. You have to really spend time, especially as technical individuals. We're not sometimes the most social individuals on the planet. And it's hard for us. And I know I just totally went down the trope of what technical people are. We're not social, but we're all here. But at the same time, it's hard in many cases across the board, whether we're social or not. All human beings tend to flock to people that resemble us in general. And sometimes we have to break through and say, I'm going to reach out to someone across and my peer and just get to know them and spend some time building a relationship with someone we don't know. It will pay off in spades in your relationships at work. It pays every single time I've done this. And I say, I'm going to go and spend time with someone I don't know. It builds bridges. And every single time I've done this in my career, it is always, 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 always paid off. Sometimes it takes time, especially it's like, okay, he and I or she and I, or they and I ended up having some sort of like a heated email exchange. Something happened there. So I will intentionally go out of my way to, let's go to lunch, or let's, I'll call them on the phone and spend some time with them on the phone and say, we're not talking work. Let's just, find out, who you are. Do some backstory discussions, talk about families, vacations, something else. Build the relationships in your organizations that are potentially necessary. And also tied to the thing I was talking about, passion versus it's fine, is that your money, everyone knows the TikTok meme here. This is a very short one to close this out, is that if you have your passion, the money will follow. That don't chase money. If you do, it will create that it's fine environment for you. The money, as every single time that I talk to people out there, is that if you find your passion, you will be paid. You're going to be in a situation that's like, I don't know. I'm paid silly money for the job that I love. If you find your passion, they're going to pay you for it. It's just like you're going to be waking up, especially in your technical degrees, especially in your technical field. Everyone in here is technical. You're on the right path. You're going to be paid for your job if you're going to stick with the cybersecurity, the cyber forensic side that you're doing in here. Not all money is created equal. Just realize that, but find your passion. If you find what you love, you will be paid for it. But don't always say, I'm taking the job that pays the most money. Just be really careful about that in general. All right, in summary, I'm going to redefine these as we're going through it. Number one, don't be afraid to wear the dance shoes. Number two, what are the rules? What is the obstacle? And again, don't be afraid to break the rules. Look at the obstacles and look for the ways around them. Number three, and we need a t-shirt for this, find your Chad. We could get a t-shirt made by the end of the summit. That'd be amazing. We need Chad's face on it, by the way, just his face, just like straight up, find your Chad. Number 4, don't settle for it's fine. Overall, if you're in that situation, you're probably in you're in a pickle. I've found again and again, if someone's in an it's fine situation, you need to potentially look for a reboot. Find your passion, it's tied directly to that. Number 6, build relationships with those you normally don't build relationships with. If it's a relationship that was like, wow, that was easy, that's not the relationships I'm talking about. It's the relationships with the folks that it's like, I actually need to think, I need to build a relationship with that person. That's the folks that I'm talking about. And number 7, it's not about the money. Money is going to follow you whenever you are following your own passion. And that ties directly into, for anyone who's out there starting in your career, all of these rules are going to be maintained. This is what I wish they taught you in SANS classes. This is what I routinely tell people throughout the 20 years I've been teaching SANS. These are the same rules again and again and again that I've advised people when you're working through your careers. Now, at the end of this, one general rule that I started with, always learn. As a part of that, we have a brand new released guide, the new DFIR manual, written by Phil Moore, Heather Mahalik, Kat Headley, Jason Jordan, that has just been released at this event. Big round of applause for them right now. And they have done an amazing job, and this is just recently released. Now, to close this off, what I'd like everyone to do to close off this segment is I want everyone to stand. I know this is gonna sound stupid, but stand up. Stand up, stand up, stand up. We're gonna take a breather here. What I want you to do is to build a relationship right now. And are we going on break after this? Okay, we're gonna go on break after this. What I'd like you to do is I need you to build a relationship with 2 people that you don't know next to you. You have to shake their hand, introduce yourselves to them, and say where you're from, and then go out in the hallway and eat and drink with them. All right, thanks everyone. My name's Rob Lee. I appreciate your time.